Hi, everyone. I would start apologizing because I was not here yesterday. My flight was delayed, and I know I missed a lot of interesting things. But I'm here today, and um, I'm a sociologist, and I'm in the political science department right now, finishing my PhD at the University of Luxembourg. So I'm not an economist, and I won't go hard on the formulae and all that stuff. So bear with me. Um, so when we talk about um, the relationship between housing and well-being, the debate often revolves around the difference between the tenures. It's owning versus renting, but what if isn't all about renting, all about tenure itself, and it's more about affordability, security, and dignity. So here I have three snapshots of situations across Europe, in London, and protests in Spain calling for rent control, or this one here, where this one went viral because it was an apartment listed as affordable in Madrid for, it was like 14 square meters or maybe less. Oh, no, 14 exactly, for 700 euros. And people were joking that you could just like the shower was just next to the stove. So what is this paper about? So this paper still explores the link between housing tenure and well-being, but it can work from this different perspective that affordable housing and not only homeownership is a key determinant of well-being, especially for rich. So we shift the focus from tenure differences to deeper inequalities within race. Does this matter? Because housing influence life opportunities, financial security, and well-being. And traditional economic papers and indicators often miss these the lived realities that well-being aims to capture. So this paper argues that including metrics in well-being will help access how housing policies meet the needs of people that go beyond wealth and economics. So past studies, they all often focus on owner versus renting, but overlook inequalities within renting. For young adults, traditionally, these paths towards homeownership, they have not been linear. They are very fragmented at the moment. Not everyone is able to achieve homeownership as it was possible in the past. But the policies that we still, they didn't kept pace, and they still overemphasize that homeownership is a key to well-being. We see that in previous research, there was a negative relationship between high rates of homeownership and lower support for the welfare state. While this was true in the past, we see that recent research shows that recent decades, because of credit markets and affordability, these trends have changed. And even in when rates of homeownership starts growing up, um, support for the welfare state do not decline. So this is part of the broader aim of my dissertation, but I claim that well-being is probably one of the mechanisms that this is happening. So a little bit of literature on housing and well-being. Traditionally, what happens is that homeowners are typically more satisfied with their lives and have higher well-being than compared to renters. And this is often explained by the economic mechanism because of wealth accumulation, financial security, stability, and status and prestige of homeownership. However, some authors have argued recently that this relationship depends pretty much on how the arrangements of the welfare state. I'm sorry. And even more recently, people have argued that the debt acquired when you are purchasing a house could override the wealth effect. So that's not like likely to happen, especially for young people because they probably need a mortgage to purchase a house. They are in the beginning of their life, so often they have more debt than wealth. And for renters and as like homeowners, higher housing costs could lower consumption or the ability to save, and through that mechanism, impact well-being. So why young people? Um, here I have some memes because they often capture what statistics cannot. So the absurdity of what young people have to face in the rental market. They are called the generation rent in the literature because they cannot achieve home ownership anymore, and they face this insecurity, and their demands are often not very. It doesn't translate into public policies. So why did I choose this specific group of the population to study? Because the literature shows there is a homeownership decline among these people, and they have worsened housing outcomes. They're most likely to be renters in the private rental sector, which we know has lower quality and it's more insecure. And this is related to delayed adulthood milestones such as forming a family, getting married, having children, having a new job or a career, and that is closely related to life satisfaction. These are my research questions. I have four. I'll go through them more during the results. So it's to what extent does homeownership influence life satisfaction? How do wealth that housing costs affect homeowners? How do cost burden, credit access, and savings affect renters' well-being? And how these dynamics vary across welfare and housing regimes? This is the conceptual model. I'll come back later if I have time. Data and methods. So I use the household finance and consumption survey wave 3 and 4. I don't use the panel component because my dependent variable, which is life satisfaction, was discontinued in wave 4, 2021. So I only had 7 countries. So to take most out of the data set, I decided for this approach. The sample is young households aged 22 and 42 years old. The methods I did in 2 states. So I used propensity score matching for the cross-sectional data for 12 countries in 2017 and 7 countries in 2021. And stage 2, I do OLS regression I separate for homeowners using key variables, affordability, wealth, and mortgage debt, and separate for renters using affordability, credit constraint, and ability to save. This is just a descriptive of average scores of life satisfaction across the countries and the years. Typically, homeowners are on average more satisfied. There are 2 countries that are an exception, but this is just like a descriptive. It's not, there isn't a causality. So here we go to the results. These are the propensity score matching results that I did for owners. And I will explain this a bit. And get to my note. So the blue lines, it's very not very clear here, but it's the first one and another one here down, only on the left side. They are the statistically significant results. So they are positive, and this should be the effect of isolated effect of homeownership on homeowners compared the observed score on life satisfaction compared to the score that would have been have they remained renters. So we compare homeowners technically with homeowners and not with renters. And that way we take a little bit of the selection bias because we know that homeowners and renters are socially very different groups, and a bit of the heterogeneity. So here's the result for renters. I'll discuss the results in the next slide for homeowners and the renters together. So for renters, we see more statistically significant effects here. There are 3 countries in 2017 and 3 countries in 2021. I'll go to my hypothesis too, because that will make it easier to understand and interpret the results. So to answer the first research question, to what extent does homeownership influence life satisfaction? So I had this hypothesis that there would be a positive homeownership effect that would be larger in all regimes, but it would be larger in countries where homeownership is the norm. I did an extra model with a full sample and including older cohorts just for the sake of comparison. But I didn't include that in the paper, but to show that there was a positive effect in most countries. But when we account only for young people, because the dynamics and the housing markets they face and the conditions are different, we get a different result, and homeownership almost do not have any relationship with well-being when everything is accounted for. So we see that the relevance of homeownership declines for a younger generation because of shifts in housing markets and tenure-based impact. Then we go to renting because I had a hypothesis that renting would reduce life satisfaction, especially in countries where homeownership is the norm. So we see that here in the graph that we have a negative effect of renting on renters in Austria that wasn't expected at all. If anything, we would expect that in Austria and Germany and the Netherlands, we would expect like a positive effect of renting because there is a large share of social housing, more rent control, and all that thing. It's not like a free market like in Belgium or Luxembourg. However, we see that there is a very negative effect for Belgium and Luxembourg, and that makes sense with my hypothesis. 2021, we see the same thing. Germany is here, and so what we see from these results for the renters is that there is a weak link between tenure and well-being. That was found in the past. If we account for selection bias and heterogeneity, this disappears or even reverse. There is no region patterns. They are rather country specific. And the financialization of housing and shift in welfare regimes probably have eroded the homeownership benefits for young people while intensified the disadvantages of renting. So since we see the groups are different and they respond differently to tenure, it's tenure specific. So I was like, okay, why not to do some OLS separate? So we have homeowners and renters. So we do that and across the countries, and we see that mostly homeowners, like there is not too much of an effect. And if there is, it's not according to what the literature and housing regime says. So, however, for renters, we see there is a massive negative effect of an affordability, but especially credit constraint and ability to save. Here, ability to save has a positive effect because it's called the other way around. In the models for homeowners only. So how do wealth, debt, and housing costs affect homeowners? We see that the effect is driven by those with outstanding mortgage. I did like stepwise regression. So initially there was an effect only in Portugal, but once we include that, so this is housing value. And when we include that and unaffordability, it becomes positive also for statistically significant for Luxembourg and the Netherlands too. If I do a model only for outright homeowners or including them in the same model, but they will have like zero debt, results are a little bit different. Like mortgage debt has no effect, but it amplifies the relevance of property value. Here. And separate models reveal no statistically significant association between property value and life satisfaction. So for people who doesn't have any debt and are less likely to face any affordability problems. So for homeowners, there is an overall lack of association and financial indicators that in the past were explaining a lot, do not systematically shape owners' well-being across countries. For renters, we see that credit constraints are consistently linked to lower life satisfaction across all regimes. Savings become more important, but harder to achieve because affordability counteracts any possibility to save. And housing unaffordability has a negative association with well-being only for renters. So what about the welfare and housing regimes? Not in the expected way. We predicted according to the housing regimes literature, but we saw that results are more shaped by country-specific patterns than broad regime clusters. So here are my hypotheses. We reject or most of them or partially confirmed some. And conclusions. So homeownership does not guarantee well-being among young adults due to failing homeownership rates, rising inequality, and growing debt. Property value provides only modest well-being gains. Renting is consistently linked to lower life satisfaction, especially when financial resilience is weak, when they do not have the ability to save. And financial resilience matters more than tenure for young renters' well-being, highlighting overlooking inequalities within renting. And then my conclusions go a little bit more broad because this is part of my dissertation. So asset-based welfare policies, they fall short in today's financialized housing context, especially for debt burdened young renters. Over-reliance on demand-side tools increase housing costs and exclude low-wealth groups. Rental market vulnerabilities and wealth inequality and housing disparities increasingly shape subject well-being and should be central to welfare support. I think that's it. Yes. Thank you.